Operation Warp Speed has been distributing COVID vaccines for a month now. And for the first time, they have more vaccines than are being requested in the 1A group. Our Kelly Kennedy tells us what federal and state leaders are doing to get people in the next phases vaccinated.
Operation Warp Speed is expanding their distribution of the COVID vaccine. Right now, they are working with each state to make sure people who want the vaccine can get it as soon as possible.
We've seen substantial rises in Americans' confidence in these vaccines and interest in taking them.
Operation Warp Speed wants states to open up vaccinations to those most vulnerable.
There was never a reason that states needed to complete vaccinating all healthcare providers before opening vaccinations to older Americans and other vulnerable populations.
People in Alabama 75 and older, law enforcement officers, and firefighters can now make an appointment to get the COVID vaccine. They will start vaccinating those people on Monday. So far, the Alabama Department of Public Health says their hotline has been flooded with over 1.3 million calls.
We have made thousands of appointments, and as of yesterday morning, Public Health had scheduled over 239 clinics to be operated by Public Health.
To help with the demand, federal leaders are pushing for states to offer testing at pharmacies and health centers rather than just hospitals, which Alabama is already doing.
It allows us to have confidence in the executors. It allows us to distribute it throughout the country. It allows us to give a place where the American people are comfortable of going and receiving the shot.
So far, over 271,000 vaccine doses have been allocated to Alabama, and over 87,000 people in the state have gotten the first shot. Putting the Valley first, Kelly Kennedy, WZDX News.